There exists a civilization where mountains pierce heaven and deserts sing beneath your feet. Where forests glow impossibly green and beaches burn crimson. Where lakes reflect colors that shouldn't exist and villages disappear beneath vines in decades. This is China. Not the China of factory headlines and political noise. Not the China reduced to stereotypes by those who have never walked its hidden valleys. This is the China that whispers through bamboo forests older than empires, that glows in terraced fields climbing toward clouds, that endures in temples, clinging to peaks where eagles fear to nest. You are here because you sense it, because somewhere inside you know that a land this ancient contains mysteries no single story can hold. So take a breath and let us go where most travelers never venture. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the notifications, because Hidden Travel Gems is about to show you a China you never knew existed. And trust us, you don't want to miss a single moment of this journey. The adventure you are about to take changes how you see everything. Zhangjiajie contains mountains that defy physics, sandstone pillars rising vertically from the forest floor. Some exceed 1,000 meters. The pillars are karst formations carved by erosion over millions of years, but standing among them, geology feels insufficient as explanation. These are the pillars that inspired Pandora in Avatar, reality creating fiction's impossible landscapes. Walk the trails and you navigate vertical forests. The pillars are so tall, their summits support different ecosystems than their bases. Cable cars carry visitors to viewpoints where the full scale becomes visible. Thousands of pillars stretching to the horizon. Chenmen Mountain sits nearby. Heaven's Gate, a natural arch 131 meters high, a hole through the mountain created by erosion. 999 steps climb to reach it. The number 9 is auspicious. To climb these steps is ascending toward heaven itself. The glass skywalk clings to the cliff face, 60 meters of transparent glass suspended over a 1,000-meter drop. Your mind cannot reconcile what your eyes see. Wingsuit flyers have navigated the arch. Base jumpers have leaped from the summit, but you don't need to jump to feel the power. Simply stand at Heaven's Gate. Feel wind that has blown through this hole for millennia. Understand why mountains and divinity are synonymous in Chinese thought. Luoyang Lake sits nestled in the remote corners of northeast China. The lake formed when an earthquake in 1960 created a natural dam. The valley flooded, the forest drowned. But the trees didn't die immediately. They remain underwater, standing, branches reaching toward light that filters green through the surface. In spring and summer, the lake level rises. The forest disappears completely beneath water. In autumn and winter, the water drops. The trees emerge. Their trunks are silvered by years of submersion. Moss and algae coat the bark. The effect is otherworldly, like standing in a ghost forest that exists between worlds. Boat through the submerged sections, and you navigate between tree trunks. Fish swim through branches. The water is so clear you can see the forest floor 20 feet down. Dead leaves carpet the bottom, rocks covered in green. The lake teaches that nature creates beauty from catastrophe. That flooding can preserve what it destroys. That some forests exist only partially in our world. Visit in autumn, when the water is lowest, when the most trees are visible. Watch as the sunrise paints the silver trunks gold. See what emerges when Earth shifts beneath our feet. The Zhangye Dangxia are mountains that look spray-painted by giants. Layers of red, orange, yellow, green, blue sandstone and siltstone deposited over 24 million years. Then folded by tectonic forces, then eroded into patterns visible today. The result is a landscape that seems impossible. Bands of color rippling across hillsides like frozen waves. The colors are entirely natural. Iron and trace minerals creating the reds and oranges, chlorite creating the greens, copper creating the blues. The mountains change with light and weather. Morning creates different colors than afternoon. Rain intensifies everything. Mist softens the edges. Each visit reveals different patterns. The area was unknown outside China until recently. Now it appears on every list of Earth's most colorful places. Boardwalks allow access while protecting the formations. The sandstone is fragile. Unlimited foot traffic would destroy what took millions of years to create. Stand before these mountains and try to comprehend the time required. Each layer represents epochs when these hills were seabed. When ancient rivers deposited sediment, when pressure and heat transformed sand into stone. The Rainbow Mountains teach that Earth is artist before it is geologist, that given enough time, planets create beauty that surpasses anything humans can imagine. Fanjing Mountain rises 2,572 meters. The summit splits into two peaks, connected by a narrow bridge. On each peak sits a temple, the Red Cloud's Golden Summit Temple and the Sakyamuni Temple, built during the Ming Dynasty. 500 years of faith clinging to stone. The climb requires 8,000 steps, carved into rock. Some sections are nearly vertical. Chains provide handholds. The exposure is significant. Not everyone who starts reaches the summit, but those who do encounter something transcendent. The temples sit above the clouds. Literally, the mountain creates its own weather. Clouds form below the peaks. You stand above them, looking down at white extending to the horizon. The mountain is sacred in Chinese Buddhism. The temples were built because this peak seemed closest to heaven. The effort to construct them was extraordinary. Every brick, every beam, carried up 8,000 steps. The temples teach that faith requires sacrifice, that some places demand effort before they reveal their meaning. The mountain is UNESCO protected now. Visitor numbers are controlled. The stairs are maintained, but the difficulty remains. Fanjing teaches that heaven requires climbing, that the sacred sits above the clouds, that some truths reveal themselves only to those willing to ascend. Padang Jaran contains the tallest stationary sand dunes on Earth. Some exceed 500 meters. The dunes don't migrate. They sit locked in place by complex wind patterns. Between the dunes sit lakes, over 100 of them, freshwater lakes in the middle of the desert. The contrast is surreal. Climb a dune and look down at turquoise water surrounded by sand. The dunes sing. When conditions are right, the sand creates sound. Low-frequency rumbling that seems to come from the dunes themselves. Ancient travelers called it the voice of gods. Science calls it avalanching sand grains creating resonance. Neither explanation captures the eeriness of hearing dunes hum. The desert is remote. Travel requires four-wheel drive vehicles and guides who navigate by GPS and memory. Mongolian herders live on the desert edges. Their camels are the two-humped Bactrian breed, adapted to extreme cold and heat. The herders know the desert intimately, know which dunes sing, know where the hidden lakes sit. The desert teaches that water exists in impossible places. That sand can be as permanent as stone. That deserts contain beauty different from any other landscape. Climb these dunes at sunset. Watch sand turn gold, then purple. Listen for the singing. Let the desert show you its secrets. Yadan is a geological term, a word that carries the weight of the desert's history. Wind-carved rock, millions of years of erosion, creating shapes that seem designed. Castles, ships, animals. The formations rise from flat desert. Some are hundreds of meters long. The stone is layered sediment, each layer eroding at different rates. The result is sculptures that change constantly. What exists today will be different in 100 years. The most famous Yadan fields sit in Gansu and Xinjiang. The Dunhuang Yadang National Geopark contains formations that seem alien, like standing on Mars. The color is rust and gold. The shapes are impossible. Walking through these fields is walking through landscape that shouldn't exist. The wind is constant. It's the wind that creates and destroys, the same force. The formations teach that erosion is sculpture, that wind, given enough time, can carve mountains, that what seems solid is temporary when measured in geological time. Visit at golden hour, when low sun creates long shadows, when the formations gain dimension impossible to see at noon. Watch wind continue the work it has done for millions of years. Houtuan sits empty and green on Shengshan Island. This fishing village was abandoned in the 1990s when residents moved to the mainland seeking better opportunities. Within 2 decades, nature reclaimed it. Vines cover every building. Ivy crawls through windows. The village has become a monument to impermanence. What humans build, nature dissolves. The stone paths remain. The building shells stand, but green has swallowed everything else. Walk through these streets and hear only wind and birds. The silence is profound. Every structure is covered. Some buildings are so consumed by vegetation you can barely see the walls beneath. Others are just emerging from green. The village is becoming tourist attraction. Photographers discovered it. The images went viral. Now visitors arrive to witness nature's victory over human construction. The irony is not lost. We abandon places. They become beautiful in their abandonment. Then, we cannot resist returning. Hutuan teaches that human presence is always temporary, that nature waits patiently for us to leave, that abandonment creates its own kind of beauty. Visit knowing your presence contributes to the transformation. That tourism will change what made the village compelling. See it while the green still dominates. Detian Falls splits the border between China and Vietnam. The Khe Sun River drops 30 meters in 3 tiers. The water is milky white with limestone sediment. The falls are the widest in Southeast Asia, 300 meters across at peak flow. Stand on the Chinese side and look across at Vietnam. The falls belong to both nations. The border runs down the middle. During the monsoon season, the volume increases dramatically. The falls merge into a single curtain of white water. The sound is constant thunder. The spray creates rainbows when sunlight hits at the right angle. The surrounding landscape is karst mountains covered in jungle. Rice paddies stretch along the valley floor. Water buffalo graze. Farmers work fields as they have for generations. The scene feels timeless, except for the occasional tourist boat. The falls teach that borders are arbitrary, that nature doesn't recognize the lines humans draw on maps, that water flows regardless of nationality. Bamboo rafts carry visitors to the base. The spray soaks everything. The power is humbling. Stand here and feel 2 countries sharing the same water. While water flows freely across borders here, our path leads next to the roof of the world, where the air thins and 3 sacred peaks reflect the secrets of the East. Daocheng Yading sits at the roof of China. 3 sacred mountains rise above 4,000 meters. Snow-capped peaks reflected in turquoise lakes. Alpine meadows carpeted with wildflowers. Yaks grazing in valleys where oxygen is thin enough to notice with every breath. The reserve is remote. Getting here requires long drives through mountain passes that reach 4,700 meters. The altitude sickness is real. Headaches, nausea, shortness of breath, but the beauty is worth it. The 3 peaks are named for Buddhist figures: Chenre Sig, Jambayang, Chanadorji. Pilgrims circle the mountains for blessings. The journey takes days. Tourists photograph from viewpoints and call it good. The peaks teach different lessons to different visitors. The landscape is so pristine it seems untouched by time. Glaciers feed the lakes. The water runs clear and cold. The reserve is Tibetan territory culturally. The architecture reflects this. White buildings with colorful trim. Stupas marking sacred spots. Prayer wheels spinning blessings into wind. Daocheng Yading teaches that some places feel sacred simply by existing. That altitude and beauty combine into something transcendent. That remoteness protects what accessibility destroys. The reserve is becoming popular. Infrastructure is improving. Visit while it still requires commitment. Enshi is China's answer to the American Southwest. Sheer cliffs, deep canyons, stone pillars rising from valleys, but with Chinese characteristics, green instead of red. forest instead of desert. The canyon cuts through Hubei province, vertical walls dropping 600 meters. The sense of scale is overwhelming. The Yunlong ground fissure is a crack in the earth so narrow that sunlight barely reaches the bottom. Walk the trail along the fissure, and you move through permanent twilight. Waterfalls cascade from above. Ferns grow from the walls. The air is cool and damp. The incense pillar is a single stone column 150 meters tall and only 4 meters wide at the base. It seems impossible, like it should fall with the first strong wind. But it has stood for millennia, will stand longer. The canyon contains caves, underground rivers, formations that took millions of years to create. Walking the trails requires fitness. Thousands of steps, steep sections, but the views reward every aching muscle. Enshi teaches that China's natural wonders extend far beyond the famous sites, that the country contains landscapes most foreign visitors never imagine. That geological diversity creates infinite variety. Visit Enshi and see a China that exists beyond the tourist circuit. Huanglong is calcite terraces colored yellow by minerals. The terraces step down the mountain like natural stairs created by gods. Pools of turquoise water sit in each level. The effect is otherworldly. The terraces formed over thousands of years. Mineral-rich water flowing and depositing calcium carbonate. The colors shift with light and season. Morning is turquoise. Afternoon is blue-green. The reserve sits at high altitude. Walking the trails requires acclimatization, but the views reward the effort. Shenongjia Forest is different, dense, wild, the last refuge of golden snub-nosed monkeys, possibly the last place where the Yeren, Chinese version of Bigfoot, might exist. Sightings are reported regularly. No proof has been found. But the forest is thick enough to hide secrets. The region is the wild heart of China, the place where civilization hasn't fully penetrated, where nature still operates according to its own rules. Ancient trees, deep valleys, waterfalls hidden in forests so dense, sunlight barely reaches the ground. These places teach that wildness still exists in China, that the country contains ecosystems most outsiders never imagine. That protection requires allowing places to remain difficult to access. Let some forests keep their mysteries. Some legends deserve forests thick enough to hide in. Fenghuang sits on the Tuojiang River like a town that refused to enter the modern era. Wooden stilt houses line the water. Stone bridges arch across the current. At night, red lanterns illuminate everything. The reflection in the water doubles the beauty. The town is Miao and Tujia minority territory. The architecture reflects this, different from Han Chinese building styles. More wood, more decoration, more color, more emphasis on the relationship between building and water. Walk the narrow alleys at dawn, before the crowds arrive. Old women wash vegetables on the stone steps. Fishermen work nets unchanged for centuries. The town wakes slowly. The peace is profound. By noon, tourists flood the streets. The town transforms. Vendors sell everything. Restaurants compete for attention. The authenticity becomes complicated. But at dawn, before the tour buses arrive, Fenghuang still holds magic. The river flows, the lanterns glow in pre-dawn darkness. The town breathes with the rhythm it has maintained for centuries. Fenghuang teaches that preservation and commercialization exist in tension, that protecting beauty sometimes means sharing it with millions. That authenticity becomes complicated when survival depends on tourism. Visit early. See what the town becomes before commerce takes over. Then decide for yourself where the line between preservation and performance sits. The Fujian Tulu are fortresses disguised as homes. Massive circular or square earthen buildings housing entire clans. Some are 500 years old, built by the Hakka people as protection against bandits and invaders. The walls are thick. The exterior presents no weakness, but inside, courtyards open to sky. Families live in communal harmony around the perimeter. Each Tulu contains dozens of families, kitchens, temples, wells, everything needed for self-sufficiency during siege. The architecture is stunning and practical simultaneously, earthquake-resistant, temperature-regulating, built using techniques passed down through generations. Walk through these Tulu and feel the weight of communal living. Understand what it means when walls protect entire lineages. Xiamen sits on the coast, a city that feels different from the rest of China. Portuguese and British influence visible in the architecture. Gulangyu Island sits car-free and peaceful. Colonial mansions crumbling beautifully. The island is Piano Island. More pianos per capita than anywhere else in China. Music drifts from windows. The combination of Tulu and Xiamen teaches that China contains infinite variation, that regional differences create cultural richness, that communities develop architecture suited to their specific needs, that coastal cities absorb foreign influence while maintaining Chinese identity. Jiuzhaigou Valley is water-made art. 118 lakes in shades of turquoise, emerald, sapphire, azure. The colors are so intense they seem artificial, but they're entirely natural, result of minerals and algae and depth and angle of light. The valley sits at the edge of the Tibetan Plateau, high enough that breathing requires consciousness with every step. The lakes are connected by waterfalls. The water is so clear you can see dead trees on the bottom of deep pools. The trees were submerged when earthquakes altered the landscape. Now they stand underwater, like ghost forests preserved in crystal. The valley name means 9-village valley. Tibetan villages dot the landscape. Prayer flags flutter in constant wind. Monasteries sit above the lakes. The combination of natural beauty and Tibetan culture creates something unique, something that transcends simple tourism. The valley is UNESCO protected. Tourist numbers are carefully controlled. An earthquake in 2017 damaged some areas. Restoration is ongoing, but the lakes still glow. The colors still seem impossible. Jiuzhaigou teaches that paradise requires protection, that beauty attracts people who can destroy what they come to see. That balance between access and preservation is never perfect. Walk the boardwalks, watch the water change color as clouds pass overhead. Let the lakes remind you what Earth looks like when left relatively undisturbed. Huangshan has inspired Chinese painters for 1,000 years. The mountains rise in granite peaks wrapped in mist. Pine trees grow from impossible angles, clinging to sheer cliff faces, with roots that seem to grip nothing. The famous welcoming guest pine has stood for 800 years, branches extending like arms in eternal greeting. Sunrise from the summit is pilgrimage. Tourists climb through the night to reach the top before dawn. When light breaks, it illuminates a sea of clouds below. Peaks emerge like islands from white ocean. The effect is otherworldly, like standing above the world itself, watching creation happen in real time. The mountains contain 77 peaks, over 1,000 meters. Stone steps carved into the rock allow access. Thousands of steps. The climb is arduous, but climbing is the point. The effort transforms the view into achievement. Hot springs flow at the base of the mountains. Mineral water heated by volcanic activity deep below. The springs have been used for centuries. Soaking after climbing is tradition. Huangshan teaches that some landscapes become sacred through repetition, through centuries of artists and poets declaring them worthy, through generations climbing to witness beauty that cannot be fully captured. Stand at the summit. Watch clouds move below you. Understand why mountains hold spiritual significance in Chinese culture. Yungang grottos sit carved into sandstone cliffs in Shaanxi province. 51,000 Buddhist statues across 253 caves. The grottos were carved over 60 years during the Northern Wei dynasty, 5th and 6th centuries CE. The largest Buddha stands 17 meters tall. The smallest fits within the cup of your palm. The detail is extraordinary. Robes flow with carved fabric. Faces express serenity achieved through chisels and devotion. Hands form mudras with perfect precision. Mogao Caves sit at the edge of the Gobi Desert in Gansu. 492 caves carved into a cliff face. 45,000 square meters of murals. 2,000 painted sculptures. The caves were created between the 4th and 14th centuries. Silk Road pilgrims stopped here. The caves became repositories of art and scripture from across Buddhist Asia. In 1900, a sealed cave was discovered containing 50,000 manuscripts, documents in Chinese, Sanskrit, Tibetan, Sogdian. The find revolutionized understanding of Silk Road history. Both sites teach that art is preservation, that stone carries memory longer than paper, that empires fall, but the art they create endures. Walk through these caves in controlled darkness. Let guided light reveal fragments of color. Imagine them filled with pilgrims. Feel the weight of 1,000 years pressing through carved stone. Suzhou contains paradise in miniature. The classical gardens here are not gardens in the Western sense. They are three-dimensional philosophy, landscapes designed to capture the essence of nature within walled spaces. The humble administrator's garden, the lingering garden, the master of Net's garden. Each one a universe contained within a few acres. Water, stone, plants, architecture arranged according to principles refined over centuries of contemplation. Walk through these gardens and you move through carefully composed views. Each doorway frames a specific scene. Each window creates a living painting that changes with seasons. The gardens teach that nature and art are not separate, that humans can work with landscape rather than dominating it, that small spaces can contain infinite depth if designed with enough care and intention. The rocks are as important as the plants. Scholars' rocks, chosen for their shape, their texture, their ability to suggest mountains and caves. The selection process could take years. The placement could take months. The gardens also teach impermanence. Seasons change the view constantly. Morning light creates different shadows than afternoon. Rain transforms stone courtyards into mirrors. Visit Suzhou and understand why Chinese poets spent lifetimes trying to capture what these gardens mean. Why words always fail. Why you must walk them yourself to understand. For 6 weeks each winter, Harbin transforms into a city of ice. The Harbin Ice and Snow Festival is the largest ice festival on Earth. Massive sculptures carved from blocks cut from the frozen Songhua River. Buildings made entirely of ice. Castles, palaces, temples, all illuminated with colored lights frozen inside the ice blocks. Walk through these ice structures and you move through fantasy made frozen. The detail is astonishing. Windows, doors, stairs, all carved from single blocks of ice. Some structures are 3 stories tall. You can climb them, walk through them, touch walls that will exist only weeks before spring claims them. At night, the lights transform everything into neon dreamscape. The ice glows from within, colors shift and blend. The festival started in 1963. It has grown exponentially, now attracts millions of visitors. The cold is brutal. January temperatures average -25 Celsius. Exposed skin freezes in minutes. But the ice festival requires this cold. Warmer weather means melting. The sculptures last only as long as winter permits. Then spring comes and everything returns to water. Harbin teaches that beauty can be temporary. That impermanence is what makes some art precious. That winter can be celebrated rather than endured. Visit in January. Watch sculptors carving ice with chainsaws. Feel the cold turn your breath to ice crystals. See what humans create when given frozen water and imagination. Xinjiang is China's far west. The province where Central Asia and China blur together into something neither and both. Kashgar sits on the old Silk Road. The Sunday market has operated for 2,000 years. Merchants still trade here: carpets, spices, livestock. Uyghur traders speaking languages that sound nothing like Mandarin. The old city contains mud brick buildings that feel more Middle Eastern than Chinese. The Idkar Mosque is the largest in China. 1,600 years of Islamic presence visible in architecture and culture. Karakul Lake sits at 3,600 meters. The water is dark, hence the name Black Lake. But the setting is spectacular beyond description. Mustar Atta Mountain rises 7,500 meters behind the lake, the peak reflected in still water when wind permits. Kyrgyz nomads still herd sheep in these mountains. The Pamir Plateau is called the roof of the world, average elevation over 4,000 meters. The landscape is harsh, beautiful in the way that only high-altitude deserts can be. Endless. The province teaches that China is not monolithic, that regional differences create immense cultural variation, that the far west operates according to different rules than the East. Travel here requires permits. Restrictions exist, but the landscapes are worth navigating the complexity. Lhasa sits at 3,650 meters. The altitude is noticeable immediately. Breathing requires consciousness. Every movement demands more effort. The city is Tibet's spiritual and political capital, though those two things have not been the same since 1959. The Potala Palace dominates the skyline. 13 stories, 1,000 rooms, built on Red Mountain. The palace was winter home to the Dalai Lamas for centuries. Now, it is museum. The rooms contain treasures accumulated across dynasties. The murals depict Tibetan Buddhist cosmology in colors that glow. The chapels smell of yak butter lamps burning as they have for centuries. Qinghai Lake is the largest lake in China, 360 kilometers of shoreline, salt water, turquoise blue, surrounded by grasslands at 3,200 meters elevation. The lake sits on the Tibetan Plateau. The area is Tibetan culturally. Prayer flags flutter on hillsides. Monasteries dot the landscape. The lake is sacred in Tibetan Buddhism. Pilgrims circumambulate it, a journey taking weeks. Chaka Salt Lake is mirror-reflecting infinity. The lake is covered in salt, left by evaporation. When water covers the salt, the surface becomes perfect reflection. Walk onto the lake, and you walk through sky. Tibet and Qinghai teach that altitude creates its own beauty, that high plateaus contain ecosystems different from any other, that some places feel sacred simply by existing. Giant pandas exist because humans decided they should. The species was nearly extinct. Habitat loss and low reproduction rates pushed them to the edge of oblivion. The Chengdu Research Base has become the world's leading panda conservation facility. Over 200 pandas live here. The base is part zoo, part laboratory, part last hope for a species that seems designed for extinction. Watch a panda eat bamboo and witness pure contentment. They sit, they munch, they seem utterly unconcerned with the extinction that nearly claimed them. Each panda consumes 40 pounds of bamboo daily. The base has perfected panda breeding, artificial insemination, careful genetic management. The goal is reintroduction to the wild. Some captive-born pandas have successfully adapted, others have not. The success rate improves annually. The base also houses red pandas, smaller, more active, equally adorable. The research conducted here extends beyond pandas. Conservation science, habitat restoration, education programs teaching why endangered species matter, why letting them disappear diminishes all of us. The base teaches that extinction is not inevitable, that humans can repair damage they've caused, that caring for a single species creates infrastructure that helps many others. Visit and watch pandas being pandas. Let their existence remind you that hope requires action, that sometimes love for a species is enough to pull it back from the edge. What you have witnessed so far is a China transformed from stereotype into truth. These places exist. These landscapes are real. But what makes them matter is the connection you bring to them. The wonder you feel standing before mountains that inspired centuries of art. The peace you find in gardens designed to capture infinity in a few acres. The awe that fills you when terraces climb toward clouds. Your experience of China matters. Where has this journey called to you? Which place made your heart recognize something true? If you're feeling this journey the way we are, do us a favor right now. Hit that like button, subscribe to Hidden Travel Gems, and drop a comment below telling us which destination surprised you most. Because the real journey is not just watching this documentary. The real journey is allowing your understanding to transform. Your voice matters, your story matters, and we're just getting started. Let's keep going. Hainan is China's tropical island. Palm trees, white sand beaches, water warm year-round. Sanya sits on the southern coast. The beaches here rival any in Southeast Asia. Yalong Bay, Dadonghai, Sanya Bay. Each one offering clear water and tropical sun. The island is developing rapidly. Resorts line the coast. Duty-free shopping attracts mainland tourists seeking bargains. But drive inland and you find a different Hainan. Rainforest, mountains, villages where the Li minority maintains traditional culture despite pressure to modernize. The Li people are indigenous to Hainan. Their language and customs differ entirely from Han Chinese. Traditional textiles, unique architecture, spiritual practices that predate Buddhism and Taoism. The island also hosts Nanshan Temple. The temple contains a 108-meter statue of Guanyin, the Bodhisattva of compassion rising from the sea. Pilgrims come to pray. Tourists come to photograph. The statue is visible from miles offshore. Hainan teaches that China extends into the tropics. That tropical paradise exists within Chinese borders. That development and tradition exist in constant negotiation. That some islands transform so rapidly that visiting 10 years apart reveals entirely different places. Visit Hainan for beaches. Stay for the complexity beneath the tourist surface. Venture inland. See what persists when commercialization isn't the only option. The Li River flows through landscape that defines Chinese beauty. Karst peaks rising from flat farmland like teeth. The peaks are steep, vertical, covered in vegetation that somehow clings to sheer stone. Water buffalo graze in rice paddies. Bamboo rafts float down the river, piloted by locals using long poles. The scene is so iconic, it appears on the 20 yuan note. Chinese painters have depicted this landscape for centuries. The peaks inspired countless poems. The river inspired countless songs. Cruise from Guilin to Yangshuo, and you float through 2,000 years of artistic inspiration made real. Every bend reveals another perfect composition. Every view seems designed for contemplation. The mountains have names that describe their shapes. Elephant Trunk Hill, Folded Brocade Hill, names that make sense once you see them. Cannot be unseen once pointed out. Yangshuo town sits surrounded by these peaks. The West Street bustles with tourists and vendors, but bike into the countryside and you find villages that seem unchanged for generations. Farmers working fields, children swimming in the river, life continuing at the rhythm it has maintained for centuries. The landscape teaches that some beauty is so perfect it becomes cliché, that the challenge is seeing it fresh. That the most painted, most photographed, most famous views can still take your breath away if you approach them with open eyes and empty mind. Yunnan Province contains more ethnic diversity than any other region in China. 25 recognized minorities, hundreds of distinct cultures. Lijiang's old town is Naxi minority territory. Cobblestone streets, wooden buildings, water channels flowing through the town providing irrigation and music. The Naxi have their own pictographic writing system, one of the few still in use worldwide. Dali sits beside Erhai Lake. Bai minority culture dominates. The old town contains traditional architecture, mostly reconstructed but still beautiful. The 3 pagodas rise behind the town, Buddhist structures 1,000 years old. Shangri-La, formerly known as Zhongdian, was renamed for marketing purposes, but the landscape lives up to the mythical name. Tibetan monasteries, alpine meadows, snow peaks. The Songzanlin Monastery is the largest Tibetan Buddhist monastery in Yunnan. Luoping is different, flat, agricultural. Each spring, canola fields bloom yellow. Millions of flowers transforming the landscape into gold, extending to the horizon. Photographers arrive by the thousands. The sea of yellow is so intense it seems artificial from distance, but walk through the fields and you understand it's entirely natural. Yunnan teaches that China contains infinite variation within a single province. That minority cultures create richness, that beauty takes many forms, that eternal spring is not metaphor in some places, but actual climate. Shanghai is not one city, but many cities occupying the same space simultaneously. The Bund stretches along the Huangpu River, colonial architecture from when European powers carved China into spheres of influence. Art Deco facades glowing at night. Buildings that belong in Paris or London somehow thriving in China. Across the river, Pudong rises like the future made steel and glass. The Shanghai Tower, Jinmao Tower, Shanghai World Financial Center. The skyline is blade-edge modernity that makes other cities look dated. But walk into the French concession, and time shifts again. Tree-lined streets, stone mansions, cafes where revolutionaries once plotted the overthrow of dynasties. Yew Garden sits ancient and serene amid the chaos. Classical Chinese architecture, koi ponds, rock gardens that seem to contain mountains in miniature. Everything arranged according to principles older than the city itself. Nanjing Road pulses with commerce that never stops. Shops and lights and crowds moving like blood through arteries. 25 million people living in the same metropolitan area. The density should be oppressive. Somehow, it works. Shanghai teaches that transformation is constant, that cities can reinvent themselves without erasing what came before, that East and West can merge into something entirely new, that the future and the past can coexist on opposite sides of the same river. The Great Wall does not cross China, it defines it. 13,000 miles of stone and earth, snaking across mountains, deserts, grasslands, built over centuries by millions of hands. Many of those hands never left. The wall is also tomb. Stand on the ramparts at Jinshanling and feel the weight of dynasties pressing through your feet into stone. The wall climbs ridges that seem impossible to walk, let alone fortify. Each watchtower positioned within sight of the next. An ancient communication network built before electricity, before radio, before anything we take for granted about connectivity. The Mongols eventually breached it. All walls fall eventually. But the wall teaches something deeper than military strategy. It teaches that humans will attempt the impossible when fear and vision combine. That stone outlasts emperors, that the greatest monuments are built not by kings whose names we remember, but by the anonymous millions whose names were never recorded. Walk the wall at dawn, when mist fills the valleys below. Feel 500 generations of footsteps echoing beneath yours. Understand that this is not one wall, but many. Built, rebuilt, extended. Each dynasty adding their section. Each generation maintaining what their ancestors began. The wall is verb, not noun. Action, not object. Still being built in the sense that every visitor adds their presence to its meaning. You have walked through mountains that pierce clouds and deserts that sing beneath your feet, through forests glowing impossibly green and beaches burning crimson, through villages disappearing beneath vines and temples clinging to peaks where eagles fear to nest. You have encountered lakes reflecting colors that shouldn't exist and terraces climbing toward heaven. You understand now that China is not what you were told it was. China is vast beyond comprehension. China is ancient beyond memory. China contains multitudes, beauty and industry, tradition and transformation, sacred and secular existing simultaneously without contradiction. China persists. That persistence is what matters. The rivers still carve the limestone. The mountains still rise. The traditions still hold, though the world changes around them with increasing speed. Communities still gather. Faith still moves people to create beauty that lasts centuries. This is the China most people never see, but you have seen it now. You cannot unsee it. You carry this knowledge forward into every conversation about this country. The understanding that stereotypes are lies of simplification, that every nation contains depths no documentary can capture, that beauty exists in places you never imagined looking. If this journey moved you, if these places called to your soul, then please subscribe to Hidden Travel Gems right now. Hit that notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to see China through new eyes. Leave a comment telling us which destination you'll visit first. Because there are places like this scattered across every country on Earth. The world is far more beautiful than fear suggests. There are always more journeys to take, always more stories waiting in forgotten corners, always more wonder to discover beyond the next mountain. The road stretches forward, the horizon calls, and somewhere beyond the clouds, another revelation waits. Thank you for traveling with us. We'll see you on the next adventure.